Housekeeping. We're still discussing the Lagos political structure since 1999. We still have our guest with us here, political affairs analyst Laide Akano. And just before we went on that break, he was establishing how the grassroots, how essential the grassroots are to the political stability here in Lagos. You can continue with your line of thoughts.
So, like I was saying, when what people in every area of Lagos, first starting, let's look at Lagos from the village structure, which has been even before 1999. That is Ikeja, Badagry, Ikorodu, Lagos, and Ekpe. Before 1999, anybody who lived in Lagos will know that beyond law school, there's not so much life. If you are going towards Ekpe, but you see what is there today. You have Lekki, you have all the free trade zone, you have all the estates, the event centers, and many things. And that one happened from 1999 to date. Many people who knew what Lagos was by 1998 will be able to attest to that. So, and then if you go towards Ikorodu as well, from 1989 to date, you would have noticed that there's been a lot of development. Now, before 1999, we are not talking of water transportation like we talk about it today in Lagos. So, if, for instance, except you can't dredge the water, if you can dredge the water, you can go from Ikorodu now to the island without coming through Ikorodu Road and all the stress of road bottlenecks. So, all these things are what people would see to say, okay, this one is still fair enough for us. So if any alternative will now come to say we are better, you first of all have to explain yourself and tell them what you think you can do better that the party that has maintained leadership in Lagos since 1999 has not been able to do. You get my point? If you take the administrations one after the other. Let's start from the president now, who was the governor then. A lot of people will tell you is the architect of modern Lagos, which to a large extent is a fact. Now, I'll quickly point out certain things. Look at Eko Atlantic City, for instance. I won't forget when the Atlantic Ocean has always taken over the whole of Ahmadu Bello. There was a day we were going to do something at, was it at a hotel? We couldn't pass through that Ahmadu Bello way. There was this building there which is all one curtain wall, glass house like that. People will tell you it was that one that was attracting the ocean. And I remember some people already saying, okay, maybe they should go to worship to appease the mermaid, so all sorts of things. But then the administration look at it as they could solve the problem. So now we have a whole city, Eko Atlantic City there. That is one. Then you have all the free trade zones, like I have said. That was when they were mapping out everything. People would just read them in papers and wonder, okay, what is it going to look like? Then towards the tail end of the administration, they started talking about rail transit. Now what we have, the blue line, the red line, they started talking about this in the days of Bola Ahmed Tinubu as governor. Now, and then at the very last end, we started hearing about last man and all of that. But when the following administration came, that is BRF, then, like, they actually tagged him the actualizer. So he actualized most of the things that was blueprint then. So, and I will give him credit for certain things which government started talking about in his own administration. Take, for instance, the Lagos State Security Trust Fund. Although a lot of things have been discussed about security in Lagos, but he gave it form. Let me quickly mention the Eyimbeyin Summit. which started since the days of Shiwaju. The Igbeti Summit was a kind of a gathering where people from all over the world would discuss all sorts of ideas on how to move Lagos forward. I remember listening to one of the summits then when somebody was talking about BRT in Brazil, how they will replicate it in Lagos. I've always known about Brasilia, Sao Paulo, and some Brazilian city, but that was the first time I heard about Curitiba. So that person focused on Curitiba. I said, so I was like, what is Curitiba? So I now checked. I found out it's a city in Brazil. And so, Igbeti Summit was there, which is like the talk shop for ideas then, since the days of Asiwaju. It continued during the administration of Fashola as well. So then, the RRS we have in Lagos today came during the time of Fashola, you know. Then BRT was showing up at the tail end of Asiwaju, but it was Fashola now that concretized it, took that portion you have on Ikorodu Road today. You know, anybody who was in Lagos before Fashola should remember Molue, you know, how notorious they were. And so I don't think, if you see Molue today, maybe in a museum or maybe in drawing, you know, or maybe
Ogun State side.
maybe in Ogun State side. Okay, so that is that. Many things you can count for Fashola. And Green Lagos was a mantra there. I read in the papers today that the current administration, led by Mr. Sanwo-Olu, is maybe just planted 20,000 trees and stuff like that.
13,000 trees. 10,000
But
plus.
you know, I remember the days of Fashola. It was not just once in a while thing. It was like an everyday thing. Lagos was almost green back then, because Green Lagos was a program. And Lagos has had this flooding climatic problem ever since, but maybe it wasn't this much. And when they were talking about Green Lagos, the conversation around it was always that climate change is a big challenge and we must rise up to it immediately. So
Okay.
I wish it had been sustained with the tempo from BRF administration. I wish it had been sustained. Government after government still talk about it, but the tempo was not it's not as it was during the BRF administration.
Okay, I really like that you reel that achievements of successive administration, and if I give you time, you will still talk about more. But because of that, we need to manage our time properly, and I'd just like us to touch on a little stuff concerning this conversation. Still going back to the grassroots, the structure of the grassroots now. Let's talk about the CDAs, the collaboration between the state and the community development associations, the community development committees, the traditional rulers, because again they have they play a role when it has to do with Lagos politics. And I'd like you to look at, since 1999 up to now, how the collaboration has been that has also helped Lagos have a successive political structure.
Yes. First of all, I will touch on internal security. That's where you have all the CDA, CDC helping a lot, because they have some kind of responsibility in their respective localities. So when maybe some miscreant or some unruly characters want to rise up, they quickly step in, and if they cannot curtail them, they inform the authorities. And you know, if there's insecurity anywhere, there can not be anything happening. So that is one. So, and when you talk of cooperation between the CDAs, the CDCs, the traditional rulers, you know, Lagos as a state is cosmopolitan. You have many people from various ethnic groups, even beyond Nigeria here. You know, there was a day I went to somewhere in Lagos, and when I saw certain people, it's like a community, and I just felt they are northerners. But I was made to understand they are not even Nigerians, that many of them are Malians, they are Chadians, and I was like, in Lagos here? But when I now asked somebody that, I hope they are not much of a problem. And they said, no, they respect the authorities, they respect the Oba, and if there's anything that any of them does, all they need to do is just to call their leader. So you have the CDA to credit for that, because it's well organized, across Lagos. Then I think CDAs now form the CDC, which is the Community Development Committee. So they help in areas of sanitation, more especially government, for instance, cannot, if there's to be something to do today, government has the apparatus, but the nook and crannies will have to be implemented through the CDC, through the CDAs and the traditional rulers. Then where like I said, Lagos is cosmopolitan. People have cultures, people have traditions, and some of the time you see certain things and you are in a kind of culture shock, because you would have seen it, all the barakbos of many people coming from many parts of Nigeria. So, but in any community they happen to be, the traditional ruler there tries to maintain, to ensure that the settlers, indigenous residents, and entire Lagosians, because government sees everybody as a Lagosian, so that there's cordial relationship and mutual understanding among them, or else, there will always be chaos.
All right. Since we're still talking about the political structure here in Lagos, let's also look at how political inclusion has been over the last 27 years in terms of women and youth, to also ensure, and also persons living with disabilities as well, how they have been able to be accommodated into the political structure of the state.
Well, I think look at the senators in Lagos. If you don't have more than one, at least you have a woman among the senators in Lagos.
Is that enough? One?
Out of three.
Okay.
So, and it's deliberate. Lagos makes sure that women is represented. It doesn't have to be from a particular senatorial district, but they will work it out such that at least there will be a woman among the senators. There are some states, if you look at it thoroughly, out of the 36, there are states where maybe a woman has never been even a House of Rep member, if you check from 1999. But it is not like that in Lagos. You have a woman senator, at least among the three, which the law allows. Then among the House of Rep members, you have women as well. And people with disability as well. If you go to Lagos, if you look at Lagos State Civil Service, at the parastatals, the mainstream, you find people with disabilities. And even what now is a national policy started from Lagos, where every public building must be accessible to people with disabilities, where you need to put signages, you must put it there. Parking spaces must be reserved for people with disabilities. There has to be a ramp for people on wheelchair, and for people who maybe are visually challenged, there must be appropriate what do you call it, put in place for them to be able to navigate. So all this one started from Lagos. So, and now when people are included that way, they will know that it didn't just happen. A structure made it happen. So definitely they will continue supporting that structure. And that structure has to be a party that is conducting the affairs of the state, after being voted into office and run the government.
27 years is a long time, and again, times and seasons change and things are evolving even as the years are rolling by. And so again, elections is around the corner. Next year, elections will be holding in the country, and of course some states that will be having their Guba elections. And so what are your expectations as regards sustaining the political structure in Lagos beyond campaign promises? What more do you think needs to be done to continue to sustain that name that Lagos has?
Well, I'm not a politician to start with. Even though I vote and I have the party I vote for, but I won't call myself a politician. But the political party or any party that would continue in power must know that you deliver on the promises you made the last 4 years, because people don't forget, you know. And let me tell you a fact. Lagos is a darling of virtually everybody. It's like the bride of every political party. Even if a political party will not win, let's say, a ward, they will still want to say, okay, we want to be the party to rule Lagos, because Lagos is a showcase for Nigeria. So beyond political, beyond campaign promises, since the party in power has been able, you know, not 100%, but to a large extent, they have been able to fulfill their campaign promises, I want to assume that people will continue voting the party. You know, I want to assume, you know, but human society is not like computer program where you say, if you push this button, definitely it will give you this result. You know, it's like you see people's faces, you don't know what's in their mind. However, I believe the party too will not take people for granted. They will work very hard, you know, and even they will deliver all their campaign promises. And by the time election is closed, the party must remind the public that these are the things we promised and these are the ones we have delivered. Mm-hmm. So that people don't take them to task on what they didn't promise. Mm-hmm. Because if I don't promise you something, and you now say, hey, I will have to remind you, I didn't promise you that. But all I've promised you, if I've delivered, I will tell you, madam, I promised you this, I've done that. I told you I would buy you lunch. I didn't tell you I would buy you an iPhone. So I will know that, okay, I promised you lunch, I promised you movie ticket, I've given you all that. Okay. So.
All right, it has been an insightful conversation examining the political landscape here, or structure rather, here in Lagos since 1999. And our guest also did justice to establishing or reeling out achievements of successive administrations here in Lagos. Thank you so much for your time on the conversation. We've been speaking with Public Affairs Analyst, Mr. Laide Akano.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. The program continues shortly. Stay with us.